The bond between Cartethyia and the rover seems to have long transcended that of mere comrades. When you raise the elevator before the boss fight, a hidden passage is revealed below. Follow it all the way to the end. You'll find a portrait of a saintess displayed at its terminus. Upon triggering this achievement, Let Time Pass Me By. This achievement name is actually from a classic Japanese song by Teresa Tang, with the iconic line, "Let time flow away, I care only for you." When you unlock the arrow form, regardless of the weapon you wield, your attacks will manifest as an arrow-infused haltir, a blade forged from Cartethia's blessing. The moment this sword is obtained, even the rover's signature golden eyes shift to mirror Cartethia's irises, a poetic transformation, as if stained by her essence. This power is precisely what enabled us to overcome Fleur-de-Lis, another form of Cartethyia. After defeating her, the dropped sword Echo explicitly states that additional buff effects can only be obtained when equipped by both the rover and another currently unavailable gacha character. If my speculation holds true, this mysterious character is none other than Cartethyia herself, and their profound connection is visually reflected in the Arrow Rover's combat VFX animations. When her passive resonance reaches full stack, her irises undergo chromatic shift to Cartethia's signature cerulean hue, emitting a radiant glow. The orbiting buff particles dynamically manifest. The maiden is safeguarding you all the time. In a sense, she will accompany you all the way to the end of the journey. Yet Cartethia's characterization defies such simplistic archetyping. Let us deconstruct this trinity of contradictions: the Maiden, the Defier, and the Deathcrier, which also forms the nomenclature for version 2.2's main narrative arc. Arguably, it achieves unprecedented synergy between environmental storytelling and real-time rendered drama in the history of Wuthering Waves. This is Blurred, welcoming you to the Celestial Bastion. Cartethyia, alias Fleur-de-Lis. In French, this name means the fleur-de-lis emblem. If you take a closer look at the young girl's accessories, you will notice many fleur-de-lis design elements, like her necklace and the hem of her dress. This emblem is used by the enigmatic Priory of Sion in the Da Vinci Code. In France, the fleur-de-lis emblem carries a symbolic association with royal authority. Coincidentally, Fleur-de-Lis was born a puppet of the divine right of kings. The false god Leviathan orchestrated the ascension of Fleur-de-Lis, a noble-hearted yet unwitting soul, as the Order's blessed maiden. Through her revered name, Leviathan reaped the fervor of the masses, weaving a creeping spiritual pestilence that devoured free will, all to crown itself atop a throne of hollow faith. When we defeated this false saintess in the weekly boss, the material we obtained happened to be called When Irises Bloom. It is written that when the shell of the deity is shed, her true life is awakened. It turned out that Fleur-de-Lis finally realized that she had become an accomplice of the false god. Although her body was possessed, she still managed to separate a part of her personality. With the little consciousness she had left, the dissociated part of her personality thus takes the form of her younger self, which is the Cartethyia we see. Unlike Fleur-de-Lis, who bears the weight of myriad beliefs, Cartethyia embodies the innocent, shy, and lovable charm of a rustic maiden. When she compared Cantarella to a deep-sea jellyfish, the speechless expressions of the rover and Abby made her panic immediately.
我也没看清，只能描述它作为共鸣者带给我的感觉。
When talking about how she named a gondola Faom, such a cute name, the rover and the family head wore the smiles of loving parents, which made Cartethyia shyly dart her gaze around. Sometimes her ears twitch playfully when idle. She waves sweetly at Abby when he flies by. If you feed her Loris salad, she doesn't even try to hide how much she loves it.
哇，是我最喜欢的青汁月桂沙拉。青汁月桂沙拉就是最好的食物。还是好酸。
But when you offer her the pizza tropicale, she suddenly changes her tune.
不要。
Dialogue options highlighting her sundry personality. When Cartethyia asks for your help, agreeing will earn a cheerful
约定好了。
But if you refuse, she instantly puffs up like an angry pufferfish with a
那我自己去。
She also takes on the role of the team's snark commentator. When the family head asks the rover, "Are you hurt?" Zrenia Cartethyia mutters in the background.
好可怕的笑容。
Because she was afraid of the waterfall, if you forget to warn her before waterfall climbing, she'll reply to you with a classic tsundere jab.
为什么不早点说？
Nothing is more endearing than Cartethia's overwhelming girlish charm during your first shared voyage. Paired with playful sound effects, it almost feels like a date. Yet, despite being such an emotionally vibrant girl, no one knows that everything about her is incomplete. As a fragment separated from Fleur-de-Lis, the world through Cartethia's eyes is devoid of color, only shades of black and white. She cannot savor the taste of food, nor does she feel hunger. Even her own memories are fractured and scattered. From the moment she was split away, Cartethyia has carried a singular mission: to meet her end alongside Threnody and Leviathan in mutual destruction. She must find someone worthy to entrust her power to, someone who can deliver final rest to her Threnodian-possessed self. After decades of waiting, the girl finally meets her destined one. On that twilight evening of the carnival, her solitary performance at last gains a partner to share the dance. This is why, even as Cartethyia gazes upon a crumbling world, she still voices this line in her heart.
剩下的路，我看得很清楚。
Over their 3-day journey side by side, we witness the deepening bond between them. Initially, the amnesiac girl fears she might be an accomplice to the false god. Terrified her guidance would lead her companions into Threnodian's trap. Yet the rover's 3 unwavering words anchor her in solace.
我很强，所以到时候我会记住现在这个担心我的你的。
When the tear vine is plunged into the stone throne, Cartethyia reclaims fragments of her lost memories. A azure ember, symbolizing the Sentinel's sovereign authority, merges into the rover's being. This energy was originally supposed to be prepared for the true Saintess. But Cartethyia is no Saintess. Instead, she grows certain. She is Threnodian's resonator. Even Abby notices her unease.
为什么你心事重重啊？
And the rover's I trust you fills the guilt-ridden girl's eyes with trembling resolve.
我相信你。
The strength of their bond is proven in the trials ahead. Only through their united efforts could they overcome each ordeal. Like Cartethyia, she will clear the dark tide obstructions for you, guide you in summoning High Sky Herald, and help you activate the Wind Rider compass. Even when using the High Sky Herald to traverse terrain, her dialogue implies she's holding on to you closely.
抓紧我，别掉下去了。
And when you leap as a giant plush puppet, she clings to your back.
凯蒂西亚，抓紧我。
哦，好的。
The fluffy arms are so soft that even the maiden can't bear to let go.
背上软乎乎的。我是说我没事。
Though an incomplete being with fragile power, she still strains to support you.
不要太勉强自己。
没关系，我只是在发挥自己的作用。
Of course, the rover refuses to let her shoulder have too much burden.
还差最后一点。
这段我来吧，你好好休息。
By the journey's end, they reach a point where merely uttering her name is enough for unspoken understanding.
凯蒂西亚，
已经准备好了。
After this shared odyssey, no matter how thick the walls the lonely girl once built around her heart, they must now be crumbling, leaving her vulnerability bathed in newfound light. As the Hognes-bearing Threnodian's authority looms before them, Cartethyia volunteers to draw the sword herself, determined to shield others from its trap. But the rover counters,
一起如何？
the once fragmented girl is slowly becoming whole. Yet this wholeness is nothing like the hollow perfection Threnodian sought to impose.
你的生命，你的理想，皆为我设定的内容。这便是我给予你的完整与完美。
It is the rover's ideal, forged through mutual trust and reliance.
大家都在发挥自己的作用，不要苛求完美，相互信任的感觉，如何？
很好。
From that moment, Cartethyia grows proactive. She teaches you to whistle and summon the Phaeom.
对了，你要不要试试用口哨叫呼母过来？大概是这样。
She even calls to check on Cantarella, whom she once distrusted.
早上好。
你能主动找我，看来我不用担心自己的准备白费了。
When you tease her with robotic monotone, she fires back with tsundere flair.
括弧，盈盈笑意，括弧。
我才不会那样说话。
所以，不论外人怎么评价，怎么影响，只要本心不变，不就没问题了吗？就算这个外人是名士或者岁主， 也不会有区别。
The rover's earnest encouragement imbues Cartethyia with boundless resolve. A long-paused whisper of thank you carries the weight of her unshackled heart.
刚才的话，谢谢。
As Hognes plunges into the stone throne, memories of the past surge forth, and Cartethyia finally solidifies her resolve. Even as Threnodians resonate her, she raises her sword in defiance against the false god. Just as she once declared in her former life as Fleur-Deli,
我从未忘记自己的誓言。如果神明向无辜者举起了屠刀，那我也会向神明挥剑。
this act of divine rebellion is witnessed by Cantarella, the newly anointed saintess. And in that moment, the gears of fate labeled "the saintess must die" begin to turn. Perhaps the saintess herself is irrelevant. It is her will that truly matters. Clutching her iris-shaped necklace, Cartethyia recalls fallen comrades, tears streaking down her cheeks. The gentle rover gives her space to grieve, silence speaking louder than words.
漂泊者，刚才又有。
这件事待会儿再说吧，现在有人需要静一静。
That night, beneath the starlit sky of the floating gardens, Cartethyia sings a folk ballad about farewell. She wonders aloud if her goodbyes and her gratitude to fallen comrades could ever truly reach their hearts. Tears glimmer in her eyes. The rover, unwavering, reassures her, your feelings will reach them. To prove it, he shares a story.
我曾亲眼见过一对已经生死相隔的朋友，在索诺拉中达成了和解。
He speaks of Shangliao and his dear friend. The girl's despondent gaze flickers with fragile hope.
你的感受是可以传达给他们的。
Yet when the rover broaches the topic of unresolved attachments, it plants a seed of reluctance within Cartethia's heart.
只要他们执念未散，索诺拉没有帮他，他们是不会自然消亡的。
执念未散，便不会自然消亡。
凯蒂西亚，
没什么，只是想到了一些事。
She deflects the conversation, evasive. Why? Because deep down, she too is bound by attachments. As a severed fragment, Cartethyia herself is one such attachment, a lingering resolve Fleur-de-Lis could never relinquish. Cartethyia is ultimately a pawn in a grand scheme to dismantle Threnodian's reign. Once her purpose, to find a way to defeat the false god, is fulfilled, her existence, bound by unresolved attachments, will fade. The ballad of farewell she just sang is in fact Cartethia's character theme. May glory plunge into celestial abyss, with lyrics precisely proclaiming, "Then I will walk down the glory path, bring honor and brightness back, wipe out all the enemies in sight. There is no turning back this time." Perhaps her birth was always meant to end in death. She has long been aware of this. Yet her only regret is parting from the rover, the one who helped her reclaim old memories and forge new.
And who's blessed and walk down the glory path, bring honor and brightness back, wipe out all the enemies in sight. There is no turning back this time.
我还想在这里多待一会儿，可以多陪陪我吗？
Placed on my head, one day we shall cheer and making joy.
这
After a night of shared vulnerability, their bond deepens, and Cartethyia steels herself to confront mortality. From now on, she must face life and death bravely to fulfill her mission.
出发吧，今天就是定胜负的时候了。
When facing her former guardian knight, we witnessed an unusual shift in the young girl's typically composed.
卡迪安特，
他应该不是你认识的那个了。
After repelling the knights, Cartethyia maintained an extended silence before ultimately steering the conversation elsewhere, quietly entombing her sorrow within the deepest recesses of her heart.
我们去复原水路吧。
Yet, where lingering attachments persist, there can be no natural dissolution. Thus, in subsequent battles, the Guard Knights resurge repeatedly, bound to fulfill their sworn duties beyond the veil of death, as the girl remarked.
他大概被困在过去了吧。
There was an era when Cartethyia too remained ensnared in time's labyrinth. Yet now, she must carry forward her comrades' collective resolve into battle's crucible.
接下来，交给我。
Only when the rover declares, "Leave the rest to me," inheriting the knight's oath to protect her, does the cycle break. The knight fades, his duty passed on like a fairy tale prince claiming his charge. Just like in fairy tales, the knight entrusted the princess to the prince.
请带上他的粉，一起战斗吧。
Yet the next lingering resolve to dissolve would be Cartethia's own. When the haltear is thrust into the stone throne, the girl's final memory shard reconstructs itself. She confesses her original plan, to seek one worthy of inheriting this power and use it to seal both Threnodian and Flordelis' possessed form forever.
将神明赐予的、神明拥有的、神明掠夺的，统统转交给有能力反抗他的人。这便是我送葬神明的方法。
However, the price to pay is that both Cartethyia and Flordelis will be buried with it. Starlight begins to shimmer across Cartethia's body, fleeting constellations heralding her wish's fulfillment.
不过，最后可以再陪我去一个地方吗？
Her voice trembles with unspoken sorrow. Yet the rover remains silent, his resolve etched in steel. Undeterred, the girl makes her final plea, a warrior's death entwined with purpose. Each time a blade pierces the throne, its power merges with yours. Now, wielding the Tri-Harmony Zenith, you hold the means to bury both God and girl.
我已经享受过很精彩的人生了，现在该把真实的未来还给剩下的人了。 还有比这更适合的结局吗？我已走到结局，请点亮舞台最后的光，照亮我吧。
But Cartethyia forgets. The rover's oath echoes across time.
我很强，所以到时候我会记住现在这个担心我的你的。
If you're unable to safeguard those you hold dear, what right do you have to claim strength? Defying Cartethia's guidance, the rover channels 2/3 of the Tri-Harmony's power to sustain her life. But the cost is dire. The Hognus's energy, once sealed within the Echo Rift, breaks free, coalescing into a cerulean ember that surges back into Threnodian's essence. This means that, as a Godslayer, you will confront the god whose power has already been restored.
不要去。
我已收到你的求助，接下来该按我的风格解决了。
At this point, the rover with Havoc attributes may not be a match for the gods. As Abby said,
不过你现在只剩下我吃过的力量了，真的没问题吗？
However, the rover who has endured countless reincarnations and revivals has long been more human than divine, although this is irrational. But
有些事必须要去做。
as the saying goes, the hymn of humanity is the hymn of courage. Perhaps taking a desperate gamble is the very essence of a hero. On the other side, Flordelis, who had long been possessed by Threnodian, finally awaited her own undertaker. This was a conspiracy spanning time and space between the two. In that moment, the cage of fate would be shattered by you and me together.
现在，你将这铁木擦开一道缝。闪光，进来！让能毁灭你的人进来。 你来了，弑神者。
Even in this final battle, Flordelis had actually been struggling against Threnodian's control all along. When you break her resilience, you can see her pained, struggling expression, a mental tug-of-war with Threnodian. And when she unleashes her ultimate, you'll notice she originally intended to wield the sword with both hands for a devastating blow. But the remaining consciousness in her body forced one hand back, ultimately striking with only one hand, allowing the rover to survive the fatal blow. Flordelis' crumbling sanity whispered desperate prayers that this Godslayer might grant her final absolution. However, the rover, who was left only with Havoc, proved no match for her celestial might. If your health drops to the lowest level, then she will say this sentence with a solemn and tragic tone.
如果无法为我带来毁灭，就迎接毁灭吧。
Up to this point, the outcome of life and death has already been sealed. But if I'm unable to protect you in the body of Fleur-de-Lis, then I will save you in the identity of Cartethyia. The maiden quickly rushed out, brandishing the tear vine, becoming the key to turning the tide of the battle. For true Saintess Cantarella, after departing her squad, has been tirelessly gathering scattered fragments of memory across realms. These shards left behind by generations of candidates who underwent Blessed Maiden trials, each sliver is still imbued with residual power. By assembling these crystalline echoes, as though inheriting the radiance of all previous candidates, their efforts were not in vain. Tirvine, forged by gods, now pulses with mortal power, just as Cantarella declared.
因为卡提西亚，你选择拿起了这把剑，它才成了圣女的剑。既然如此，冒牌的圣女为何不能成为真正的圣女呢？
Perhaps the Saintess never existed, until you defied the gods with righteous steel. After all,
一往无前的人是不会被停滞不前的剑定义的。
in the eyes of the maimed maiden, there was originally only black and white. It was not until the fated person appeared that her world was filled with color. This power is not a gift from the gods, but rather from Cartethyia, yourself.
英白拉多，不，你自己的力量吗？
Azure sigils crawled across the maiden's arms and cheeks, the bioluminescent toll of overclocked salvation. Cartethyia gambled her spark to reignite the rover's fading pulse. But do you still remember the words that the rover once said? The responsibility of redemption is to continue until no one needs to be saved.
Making joy.
这温暖的光不能熄灭。我将我的力量、我的祝福、我的过去托付给你。至于未来，就让我成为你的剑，一起寻找吧，一人。
At that moment, the rover awakened to arrow resonance. Even the pupils of the rover were dyed with the color of the maiden. He'll take a part of Cartethyia and keep fighting till the world's end. After gathering the Trinity Force, the rover intercepts Swordplume's surge via Spectro's chronolock. Meanwhile, the Havoc attribute launches a fierce assault, even shattering Tirvine, Hogness, and Haltir conjured by his opponent. The collapse of Threnodian's divine authority rendered all schemes meaningless. In the end, the rover wielded Cartethia's blessing to sever the centuries-old shadow over Rinascita. And in that moment, Fleur-de-Lis smiled with relief. The shattered stained glass reflects the shadow of Leviathan, signifying that its dominion has been fractured. The hallowed Blessed Maiden, at last, has fulfilled her sacred duty.
We shall cheer and dance, making joy forever.
做得好。
Do you remember the day of blooming irises I mentioned before? It states, when the divine husk is shed, her true life awakens. Fleur-de-Lis or Cartethyia? By which name does she wish to live? In truth, when you first met this maiden, her heart already held the answer.
我的名字是不，卡蒂西亚。我的名字是卡蒂西亚。 至于未来，就让我成为你的剑，一起寻找吧。
May glory-clad descend into the abyss. Cartethia's obsession finds its end. Yet little did she foresee in that fateful moment. You have become mine own fixation.
I'm still that girl, carry the hope. I'll break
摄取身体里的频率已经
Like fallen leaves returning to roots, the rover brought the girl back to the gentle waterside, or the homeland carrying her childhood memories. Even now in Egla Town, we can still find the Saintess's former dwelling. This is exactly the abandoned house that Chiacona talked to you about at the beginning, the one that sparked her inspiration. What the villagers fondly remember remains the farm girl not yet crowned as Saintess. On a nearby ancient tree, we discover notches marking children's growth through years. Did little Cartethyia, in those distant days, secretly stand on tiptoe while being measured under this very tree? Even if the Saintess's entire existence was orchestrated by the false god, the self-proclaimed perfect Leviathan could never comprehend how a maiden's soul, born of fate yet true to herself, wages eternal rebellion against preordained scripts. Perhaps you recall Carlotta's words.
若世上真有神明，他一定也会写诗，会作画，会哭会笑，会喜欢浪漫的骑士传说，会在人群中翩翩起舞，就和我们一样。
The Sentinel asked if she would discard all memories of her past. She said,
不，那样我就不是我了。如果只是否认自己的真实经历，那么这样取得的完美是没有心的。
你已不需要神明。
Through Sentinel's mercy, the departed soul was granted rebirth through sacred fire. Now liberated from divine scripts, what identity shall she claim in this reborn life?
那我再问一次，我该叫你卡提西亚，还是弗鲁德利斯？
还是卡蒂西亚吧。这是我们初次见面，我报上的名字。
The bond between Cartethyia and Rover transcends mortal definitions, can be regarded as a life and death friendship. Among all words she whispered to this cosmic rover, one phrase burns brightest in the celestial record.
我要超过你，你很强，比我强大，所以你能违背我的意愿，我的请求，打败我，拯救我。但如果有一天，你处在了和我同样的境遇，又有谁来拯救你呢？
Yes, who will come to my rescue? Bearer of the world's salvation, the rover has never had a way out. Yet in that singularity of time, the maiden named Cartethyia became your way out. Perhaps one day, when you're deep in trouble, she will also say those three words to you, I am strong. Now you comprehend why the chronicle is titled Whispers of the Trinity Crown. Cartethyia, the maiden who saved Renacida. She is the defier who wielded her sword against the Threnodian she once resonated with, and the death crier who laid the gods to their final rest. As the Sentinel Imperator once judged her,
卡提西亚，你无愧于圣女的名号。
Yet the titles of the Maiden, the Defier, and the Death Crier do not belong to Cartethyia alone. In this grand symphony of cosmic rebellion, every player wears the hero's mantle unseen. Did you notice when the rover delivered Imperator's missive to Cantarella? The ever-composed archivist's eyebrow twitched imperceptibly.
请说吧，我已经做好了准备。
从今以后，你们自由了。
我记住了。
Her response seemed calm, yet her heart was already a storm. Cantarella had waited far too long for this day to shatter the conspiracy of the Threnodian. The Phasalia family displays statues of false gods in their halls, yet hides their true faith in their hearts. They till the darkness, yet serve the light. In hopes that one day they might save the Sentinel and Reguna, if you ask how long they've persevered, she simply replies.
数百年，每一代。
Cantarella, the hidden heretic, drew her blade against the most sacred of vows, her own covenant with Imperator. When the Sentinel proposed dual resonance to induce Threnodian frequency collapse, for no soul can sustain twin resonators without triggering entropic cascade. But the price of doing so is that all individuals who participated in this resonance will perish alongside, including Imperator herself and Fleur-Delis. Clearly, Cantarella could not accept the sacrifice of everyone, so she willingly renounced her title as Blessed Maiden, even the power gained from her second resonance, and channeled it back to the Sentinel. And this act of defiance introduced an element of uncertainty into what was originally a solemn and tragic ending.
所以，真正的圣女已经死了。
The Blessed Maiden had passed away, yet she embraced life in the face of death. At that moment, what she defied was not the Sentinel. What she defied was fate itself. Cantarella, you are truly worthy of the title of Blessed Maiden. So now you may understand why, after the task is completed, the achievement that pops up is named Death and Rebirth. And another one that can be described as Death and Rebirth is none other than the Sentinel Imperator. In this protracted tug-of-war, in fact, the Imperator has also defied someone. That person is you, the Arbiter. In order to ascertain the essence of Threnodian, the Sentinel had no choice but to play along with the scheme and merge with the Threnodian.
凝视乃文明之毒，我只有深染，才能解析它。
A strategist stakes their life in the game, outmaneuvering fate by half a move. Through this fusion, it became clear the Threnodian cannot be eradicated. The only solution is to bind it with shackles named resonators. Thus, the Imperator deliberately guided the Threnodian to forge its own resonators, entrapping Leviathan in the process. This mad scheme compels even you, the rover, to demand answers.
卡提西亚也在你的算计中。
And what's even more defiant is that it intended to perish together with the Threnodian through the method of a second resonance. This plan also indirectly led to the Phasalia family's hundreds of years long, loyal, and heroic Blessed Maiden trials. Countless young maidens surged forward without hesitation. After all, the Sentinel's core directive is to prolong and guide civilization, not to save the few. Thus, this desperate measure was inevitable.
愚者，我是否做错了？
我没办法替被牵连的人评价，但是因你而受益的人，没有立场指责你当时的无奈。
Out of guilt towards Cartethyia, Imperator proposed to sacrifice her own life as the price to bring Cartethyia back to life. In his final moments, this storm-piercing steed voiced her sole obsession.
英白拉多是否不负嘱托？
To the amnesiac rover, this marked the first meeting between the Arbiter and the Sentinel. But for Imperator, who had guarded this cycle for an eternity, it was a long-awaited reunion. Perhaps the Imperator will never greet the Arbiter who retains his memories. Yet, if he still lingered, his answer would surely echo the vow from Fading Echoes. You fulfilled your duty, Imperator. They say unresolved obsessions defy natural demise, but a fallen leaf's existence was never meant to return to roots. The Imperator's passing heralded Cartethyia's awakening, a duality encapsulated in the trial's achievement, death and rebirth. When you encounter Cartethyia beneath the moon's gentle glow, she will tell you the world is not gentle. Yet within it, there are always warm moments that persist, to wish for kindness, then to offer it in return. This has always been the way. This unadorned truth, I believe, is the essence of tides may roar, yet civilization endures. Then I'm the newbie uploader Blurred. I've received all the requests from arbiters to update the video more quickly. This video was produced after 10 days of pulling all-nighters and working extremely hard. Although spending such a long time on polishing the work might cause it to miss the popularity wave of the version and end up being ignored, I still want to create a work with all my might for Cartethyia and my comrades who fight side by side, because they are worthy of it. And finally, I have a question. Has Blurred lived up to the trust placed in me? Well, thank you for being willing to watch until the end. I've fulfilled my obsession, and I hope we can meet again next time.